I have a Sony model XBR-65X900C, which is experiencing the 4 and 6 blink error code. So this is an LED strip fault, and we're going to be showing you today how to replace those LED strips. We do have a quick trick video available that'll be in the top right corner, but that one is only how to disable the 6 blink code and is not necessarily a proper fix. This video will go way more in depth on how to properly fix that problem. So if you do try that trick and it does not work, or you have the flashing like we're going to show you here in a second, this is going to be the video for you. So I just turned it on a second ago, and it takes a moment to boot up. Okay, so at first the picture looks okay. With this model specifically, the bottom left corner starts going dim after a few seconds. It just did right now. And then typically a few seconds later, we get some intermittent blinking, okay? And then eventually shuts off, and we get either a 4 or a 6 blink error code. We've already done a video on how to open up the back cover, so if you want to check that one out, it's going to be in the top right. So we've also just removed the main board. If you don't know how to do that, or if you're having any troubles with the clips, you can check out another video we have in the top right corner as well. So our next step is going to be removing a lot of the accessories and other parts of the TV that are currently on top of this silver shield. The LED strips are behind it, so between the screen and the silver shield. So we're going to start by removing some of the speakers and some of the shrouds that are on top and preventing us from accessing some of the screws. I'm going to start by removing the plastic shroud over here. The screws are a little bit smaller, so I did have to replace and swap out the drill bits. So we'll go ahead and get these out. Let's see, and this should wiggle out as well. We'll go ahead and do the same on the other side now. Another one here. And there are tons of screws, so you're going to want to make sure to kind of keep them all together for each section. Like I separated out between each section, but each section together. Otherwise it's very easy to lose track. We have one screw here for the smaller speaker, same over here. And there's a lot of tape holding these different wires down. We're going to want to keep them when we put everything back together. But we do need to remove all the wiring. It'll be a lot easier. So we have 4 speaker screws. They're on the outsides and the outsides. So to release this clip over here, we have a little tab we have to push in right here, and then I can lift it up and that'll release the wires. I guess we have more tape here as well. All right. And I'm going to keep this screw with the speaker screw since that kind of all goes together. We're going to also remove the IR and Bluetooth. So now the buttons, wires, the IR, Bluetooth, everything's coming out in one piece. Our next step is going to be the T-Con board. So we're going to go ahead and remove the clip right here and the 2 ribbons. So these you have to press on the sides and wiggle out. We'll remove the tape. So we'll keep these pieces together, and it's giving me a little resistance. I think we have another thermal pad. Right, yep, so that's why it's a little sticky, so just be gentle with it. Okay, so we're disconnecting the ribbon going from the T-Con board to the address boards. Actually, it might be easier to remove from the T-Con because it has a little more slack, and then pull it from here. We can just reconnect the T-Con side for now. So if you do disconnect the T-Con side, just make sure you line it up correctly. In order to remove the 2 bars that cover the address boards, we're going to have to remove this piece here, and that holds the screen together, I believe, with nice and tight with the LED strips. All right, so this part should just wiggle and slide out. Okay, and now we can go ahead and remove the covers to the address boards. And we do have to remove these pieces that are holding it down. So the reason for is because we need to lift it from this side first. And then we can kind of wiggle it out a little bit. There's a couple clips on the bottom here. There we go. That hold it in here. So that's why we can't lift from the bottom, we have to lift from the top. Next step is going to be removing all of these little aluminum screws that are all around this chassis. And you do want to be careful and want to make sure you have the correct bits, because these are very fragile. I believe they're aluminum screws. So aluminum is very fragile, and if you're using the wrong bit, you will strip them and it'll make this very difficult. I think we're all set. So the last few sets of screws are below the address boards. So we'll flip these over like this. And again, we're very gentle here. This is probably the most fragile part of the TV, so you want to be very careful. And our last set of screws are hidden here below the blackout tape. So let's go ahead and lift this up. Nope, that's not lifting. Okay, I am noticing, so these screws don't technically need to come off, but this one does have a washer that is larger than the gap. So I'm gonna have to remove this bottom one here. And I also am realizing there's one more piece of tape right on the corner we need to remove. And that should release this whole aluminum platform here. We have all of our screws out. We've removed the tape. And when I try to pull this out, it's giving me a lot of resistance. So I went and double checked and I made sure we don't have any more screws or tape, but it is giving me still a lot of resistance. So I'm kind of just gently wiggling it out. And I don't believe there actually is anything else holding it in. I think it's just lodged in there really well. And this side comes out a little easier. There we go. And I'm being very careful right here because this is where our LEDs are. So let's lift all this up now. Should be free. All right, so these are our 3 LED strips, 2 on each side, 1 in the center. Let's go ahead and remove them. So again, we have lots of screws. All right, now we're going to remove the Kapton tape. We're going to be squeezing each side here, and that's not going to be enough because the cable is also taped down, or it's some sort of adhesive below the wires. So I'm going to try and lift it up a little bit here, get my nails underneath, and then pinch, and then gently wiggle and remove. So as you can tell, there's this adhesive kind of preventing the cable from moving. All right, this should now lift off. So all 3 of these are going to be kind of more or less connected by that adhesive piece, rubber piece that was what I was saying maybe holding down the whole thing. So we're going to cut it. There we go. We'll move them to the side and get our new strips, which we will have a link in the description. We'll have these available for sale in our store. Because the LEDs stand off of the board, it does make this strip very fragile, so you do have to be very careful when handling them. And then we'll connect this in. Okay, so when I'm plugging these in, I am not getting a satisfying click sound, but I do believe they are in correctly because I can't push it in any further than it already is. Now we're gonna flip it all back over and put it back in. This is the most difficult part of the whole process. I've rarely been able to actually do this 100% the first try. I usually have to kind of take it back off, put it back on a couple times. For some reason, the alignment is very tricky. Everything looks flush, And that was actually on my first try. Wow. All right. So we'll start with putting the aluminum screws back on down here. And I'm going on the lowest torque setting here on the drill. So I guess, yeah, let me kind of go over more in detail. So the reason I was saying that typically I don't get this right on the first try is because it seems like everything's lined up correctly, and yet like the center will be raised up a little higher, and I can't even screw in the screws because they're sitting just a little too high. They won't actually grab the thread on the other side, and that's because I think the LEDs are just not lined up correctly on the screen. So maybe it's because the LED strips aren't always lined up right. I'm not 100% sure, but on this one go around, I was able to get on the first try. So if you don't get it, you might have to readjust your LED strips. Maybe they're not put in correctly. We had these two side screws. And then we're gonna bend the address boards back up here. And I think right now is probably our best time to reattach the ribbon. Okay, and actually, let's do it this way. So I'm gonna completely remove the ribbon, and the reason for it is it's actually a lot harder to attach it down here than it is up here because I have this little tab I can use. I don't have that down here. So zooming in here, we can see there's a little bit of a dotted line, and it lines up perfectly with this clip. So if that dotted line is not perfect, then you may not have properly inserted the ribbon, and you may have to do it again. So now we'll be putting the metal covers back on top. And if we recall, we had to lift from the top, which means when we're putting these back down, we're gonna have to put them from the bottom. So I have these pieces of tape here that are covering the clips that it's gonna lock into. So I want to remove those out of the way, otherwise it won't clip in correctly. All right, so actually, in order for it to properly fit, my table doesn't come all the way out to the screen, so the screen is sagging a little bit. I actually have to slightly push the screen back up for all of it to connect properly. But now I know and can see that it is connected properly, so we're all set there. Let's go ahead and screw the top down. We'll do this edge one. So I believe our next piece is the bottom bar here. Okay, just want to make sure everything seems right or feels right. Okay, the bar is not quite, maybe it'll settle in. So the bar is not coming in extremely flush, but I do remember that when I was unscrewing it, it was kind of bending a little bit. So once we screw the screws in, it should be better. And I'm actually going to do the other one on the opposite side, and then just start working my way in. Now we're going to go back to the T-con board. Right, so the T-con board, we got to clear these cables and wires out of the way. That lines up perfectly. And we have 6 screws, 3 on each side. So these two, then this guy goes on top, and the final screw, the 7th one, goes right here. Yeah. I said 6, 3 on each side, and I felt I had 7. A little confusing, but here we go. So before we put this down, we have the aluminum screws. So we'll put those back down. And then we can put this back over. So typically, when I do LED strip repairs, I like to, at some point, turn them on, make sure that they're all functioning, before I put everything back together. Otherwise, if I do and then find that I made a mistake, I have to undo everything and start over from scratch. I am not doing that here with this one because the main board needs to be connected in, and I guess this is probably a good time to do it. But if you try to turn it on with the main board disconnected from the screen or from the T-Con board, it's going to desync or unpair the main board. So you want to make sure that your screen, your T-Con board, and your main board are all connected together. Otherwise, when you turn the TV on, if you have the screen disconnected or the T-Con disconnected, it's going to throw the amber green fault, meaning it needs to pair. But now we are kind of at a point where we don't necessarily need to go further. We probably could have checked it a little bit earlier once the address boards were connected back into the T-Con. Technically, we didn't have to put all the shrouds back on, but if we did not put these shrouds back on, the screen would not necessarily be properly lined up, and we could have some light bleed, which would make us think that maybe something's not lined up right, when in fact just the shroud or this metal bar was just not installed. So I haven't really installed this correctly. I'm just making sure that there's no metal sitting on top of any of the circuit boards. That's really my only concern right now. But at this point, we have the main board back in. I only have a couple screws. Everything that needs to be connected is connected. So let's power it on. So it's plugged in. Let me press the power button. Okay. And we have our screen. So yeah, at this point we did start getting some flickering to occur, and right now we're not getting any flickering, and we're not getting any 4 or 6 blinks like we were getting before. Okay, and we're on HDMI 1, and it looks like we have good picture, no flickering, and no blinking code. All right, but at least we know it works, and we don't have any problems with the way we've set things up so far. All right, and if I recall, we had 4 screws. It was on the outside. Now we're going to finish up the aluminum screws. And I think there are 2 that are hidden behind the main board. So in order to get those, we'll have to backtrack a little bit. So I missed one under the wires right over here. And I realized that this is actually a piece that's more easily installed when the main board, or removed when the main board is actually not in the system. So typically, the easier way to do this is having the main board removed before we put this piece. But I guess I like to do things the hard way. So let's try to line up some of these wires back under the tape where they belong. This one over here went into this clip. We had these pieces. So what I'm thinking is actually we're going to have to remove these 4 screws, and it should make it a little easier for us to slide this where it belongs. Yeah, that's a lot easier. All right, and then this piece, let's see, slides similar fashion. All right, for that last one. So this is able to slide, and that's one of the locking mechanisms for removing the back cover. And then this last one goes right here, locking in the buttons. So same on this side. We're going to remove these 4 screws. This should slide on. All right, we're plugged in. Let me go ahead and turn it on. And final check, it's still turning on. So one thing I am noticing is, regardless of my angle, I am definitely seeing a little bit of light bleed. So the reason we're getting light bleed is because this little black foam strip that we have in front of the LEDs on the original strips but do not have on the replacements. So this little foam strip I've tried to remove. Unfortunately, the adhesive on the back is no longer sticky, so I can't use this one and put it on the replacements. We have tried finding and buying some replacement strip for the new LEDs, but unfortunately I've not been able to find any adequate replacements. We've talked to other techs. They're also coming up empty-handed. So if you have any information on this, let us know in the comments down below. We'd love to hear from you and know where we might be able to find this replacement piece. Otherwise, if you found the video helpful or useful, leave us a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.